Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Wealth Show, where we help Christians become brighter stewards of God's wealth. My name is David Sandy. I'm a financial advisor, and today we have Katie Jones, who is a financial money coach, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of her progress through being a financial coach, and then we have a couple of really engaging topics I'm excited about. So, with that, welcome to the show, Katie.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. I am honestly really excited for this conversation today. We've been kind of chatting about this for a while, and something that I know that both of us are really passionate about. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, likewise. So I want to just get started off and talk about a couple of things I think that are overarching themes for anyone that's talking about finances and kind of a biblical perspective on finances. And the first one is stewardship, and then the second one is contentment. So I wanted to just pick your brain and see kind of what are your thoughts on stewardship? What does it mean to be a financial steward? And that'll lead us into the first talking point here: how to redeem your role as a financial steward.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think stewardship is really about understanding that what we have is not our own. We believe as Christians that what we have is from God, whether it is our time, our energy, or our money. That includes every single resource that we have. I actually really love the concept of being a manager of the money that we have. So, being a money manager is kind of equivalent to being a good steward. So, since our money is not our own, the really important question is what would our boss, in a sense, our CEO, want us to do with the money that we have? So we have to reference the Bible, we have to ask God and be in communion with Him to understand how to manage these resources that He's given us. So that's kind of in essence what it means to be a good steward of the resources that He's given us.
Yeah, I think, I'm just going to share a little bit about my story. So, my perspective on stewardship really started when I learned about biblically responsible investing because I started to think, how does God view my investments? But then the second question was, well, how does God care about my investments? I know God cares about my giving because the Bible speaks so much about our finances and, kind of the unrighteous mammon in this world. But it really made me kind of reflect on if God cares this much about where I give and where I invest, what else? What are the other, what's the other 90% doing, and how am I honoring Him in that? So that was my first kind of light into stewardship. What was it for you that you started thinking like, maybe I should become a better steward of God's money?
Yeah, super good question. Part of my testimony and financial testimony too is my husband and I. So I actually started out in my career as a property manager for other people who owned rental properties. So I was helping them manage and rent them out and everything. And I eventually thought, like, well, hey, if this Joe Schmo that I'm helping manage his property can do it, why can't I? So my husband and I got married and we started investing in real estate pretty soon, only 3 months after we got married. And I just kind of followed what everybody else was doing. I was a big follower, still am pretty involved in Bigger Pockets and their podcasts and all of their blog posts. And I was consuming all of it very quickly and applying a lot of what I was learning there. And honestly, it kind of hit me after we bought our first rental property that this rental property is it's from God. It is his. It is God's rental property, and I need to manage this as if God were watching me. As if He were my manager and CEO looking over my shoulder. And so I wanted to be a good steward of this property, and that kind of started getting that ball rolling. Of okay, well, I want to be a faith forward landlord. I want to honor God with this rental property, but that also meant the money that I was using to invest in it, as well as just all the other resources. It was kind of this snowball effect. And I really wanted to. So I started seeking the Bible and reading it as if as if my life depended on it in a sense. I started consuming it to see what God wanted me to be doing versus what the world was telling me to do, which was just to make as much money as possible.
Hmm.
I wanted to be profitable, but I knew that there was a greater purpose to this property. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's good for me.
yeah, I think so. I was also, my wife and I did a number of flips, live-in flips,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
and we we kind of went on the cycle of doing that and making good profits from them. And we had a couple rental properties as well. But one of the things that really struck me, and I think, and I just did a YouTube about this, but the pursuit of financial independence, which actually just ties into our
Yes.
second point here, is of contentment. Whenever I went down that rabbit hole of how can I pursue financial independence, what was the motivation behind it? It was really to be independent of any source of,
Yes.
of financial worries. The problem with that was though that I was leaving God out of the equation as well. I wasn't even depending on Him for my
Mhm.
for my finances and for building wealth and all those things. So I think that really leads to the second kind of overarching theme for today, which is contentment. And I know Paul talks about godliness with contentment is great gain. So, and we're going to talk about contentment more, but I want to kick off, this time with the question: how to redeem your role as a financial steward. And the word redemption is obviously more of a biblical word. We hear this a lot with, the story of Ruth and Boaz, and kind of buying something and purchasing it for another purpose. And so I want to get your thoughts on. We kind of talked about our role as stewards, right? We don't own anything; it belongs to God. How would we manage it? Knowing that He's coming back. I always give people this example. In college, my pastors asked me to watch their house for a week, and of course I was, super nervous being in their house. Never, wasn't super close. We were
Mhm.
friends, but it was kind of different just being in someone else's house. But I always said, when y'all come back, this house is going to be better than it looks by the time y'all come back, because I was just so nervous. I wanted to honor them and obviously be a blessing to them. But I think here in this life, we have to have that same mindset of how can we be a blessing to those people that God puts in our life. We're not really here for us, and God is coming back, and when he does, will He find us faithful? So I want to hear your thoughts on what does it mean to redeem your role as a financial steward.
Yeah. Oh, that is, I mean, honestly, it's, I think it starts again with recognizing first, nothing is our own. I really like the verse, I think it's in First Peter 1, that talks about how God isn't here. Like, though He isn't here, we don't see Him. Um, even though we don't believe in or don't see Him, we believe in Him, and He fills us with this inexpressible joy. Um, and when we think about that and understand that our joy comes from God, we can let go of needing money to do for us what only God can do, bring us that joy. And so many times we start with our money problems and thinking that, okay, if I have all these money problems, I just need practical wisdom. I need more money. I need a budget. I need to pay off my debt. And we kind of think this like checklist of things, but to redeem our finances really starts with God. It
Mm-hmm.
starts with accepting the grace that He alone can give. He gives us second chances to be able to do what we need to do to have that contentment, like we just talked about, just finding that contentment first and saying, even though I feel like my money situation is a mess, I can breathe. I can let go. I can lay it down at the feet of Jesus and say, God, this is yours. I need you to give me those practical steps to do. And a lot of times it kind of starts with something that we don't always think about is just giving. Our like redeeming our situation is accepting that grace, moving forward and just giving it back to God and releasing it. And I think that that's really where we start when it comes with redeeming our financial situations, is accepting that we can't do it on our own. We
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
really can't go and do all the practical stuff, and that will never fix anything until we seek God and the peace and the joy that He brings alone.
Yeah, I want to mention two scriptures. One that talks about redeeming your time. This is in Ephesians 5. It says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil."
Yeah.
Another one in Colossians 4 says, "Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time." And both of these, the redeeming the time, is related to wisdom, and then also how that we walk circumspectly, right, as wise stewards, I believe, of God's wealth. So I think this concept of redemption, and but also redeeming our time. I know something that I prayed after kind of coming out of the financial independence movement was, God, just please help me to redeem this time that I felt like maybe I was wasting my time just pursuing this idol in my life. And I wasn't really focused on God and focusing on how can I please God, how can I be a blessing to others, and be generous with other people. I was continuing to give through through that time of flipping houses and producing earthly wealth, but I really wasn't, in my opinion, storing up those true riches, which reminds me of this other scripture that's in Luke 16. It says, "He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is also unjust in much. Therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon. Who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own?" So I think that it ties perfectly in what you're saying about how can we redeem not only our wealth, but also the time that we maybe have pursued something that wasn't godly.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I'd love to read a quote that so one of my favorite books, we're talking all about like redeeming our finances. One of my favorite books is Redeeming Money by Paul David Tripp. If you're not familiar with Paul David Tripp out there, I highly recommend anything that he writes. He has an amazing quote that I just love to share about this kind of idea. He says, you don't just need a good plan for dealing with your financial mess. You need forgiving, rescuing, and transforming grace, just the kind of grace that you already have as a child of God.
Hmm.
And and again, like when we come at our money mess, if we're struggling with finances, whether you have lots of money or little bit of money, everybody can have a financial mess no matter where they're at with their financial journey. And if you're looking at your finances and just seeing it only from the practical side of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have enough income to cover my expenses, again, just releasing it and accepting that grace, that transforming grace that only comes from God, that's the way that we can start to transform our financial situations. Um, it, I think it's so easy to get on Google and search up like, how do I do this with my finances?
Yeah.
And I'm a culprit of that too. I do that all the time when I come at a situation. Sometimes I forget that I have a father who has all the answers and who gives me the peace that I need to get through these dark times that I face. And it's funny that Google is such a great resource sometimes. So can lead us in the wrong direction when really a lot of times we really just need Christ.
Yeah, there's so it's funny. I was actually reading his book this morning.
Yeah.
I'm about 90% of the way through, and
Yes.
one of his phrases that I highlighted was, it was something like, "Discontentment is the soil that
Mm.
that the love of money is rooted in." And
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, "Whoa, that's a that's a pretty tall
Yeah.
order." But it really shapes the framework when someone starts thinking, "Oh man, I wish I had this." And I felt like this a lot whenever I was pursuing financial independence. Right? It was like, man, if we just had another house, or if we could just do another flip, or right. I think people call this the golden handcuffs. It's like, if I could just do one more year, and yeah,
Mm.
one more, and I think it's that discontentment. It's not really believing that God is enough, right? A lot of times when I work with my clients, I ask them, like, how much is enough, and they never have an answer, because there's never enough, right? Most people, when I say, if you ask people with a million, "Hey, are you ready to retire? Do you feel comfortable?" They say, "No, I really need another million." But then you ask people who are in the same situation with 5 million and say, "Well, I just need another million, and then I feel like I can retire." It's never enough. They never feel like they have enough to do what they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I don't have the book in front of me. Um, and so I can't remember the title right now. There's a book, another faith and finance book, and they say instead of setting um like a how much should I give goal, it's there's a the kind of flipping the script on how much should I save? Like how much do I need for myself? And then looking at that and then saying, okay, now I'm going to give everything else away in a
Mm,
sense. So really kind of setting that finish line for yourself, not based on the idea of like, oh, I'm going to give 10% and that's it, but like I'm going to keep maybe like 40% of my income and give away the rest of it.
hmm
I really like. I'm trying to. I used to have the book. I have a bunch of books over here.
Yeah, I was
Wait for it.
listening to Bob Lodick. I think his podcast or
Yeah.
channel is it Seed Time?
Yeah. Seed time money.
Seed Time Money, and he was talking about net. He stopped tracking net worth and he started tracking net given, and that
Yeah.
really convicted me because I thought, man,
Yes.
how am I tracking what matters in eternity? And which is not net worth. God doesn't view us in terms of how much we have in our bank accounts, right? But there is scripture and a scriptural basis to make for how much we give and store up what God calls true riches, right? For those in eternity, right? How we're ministering the gospel and how we're spreading His message of love and grace to those who need it the most. And so I thought that was pretty good. I know
Yeah.
I think you've talked to him before.
Yep.
But I want to talk just briefly about like what are some practical things that we
Mhm.
can do to redeem our role as stewards.
Yeah. Honestly, so after seeing his video about the net given, he also has a book. I have it here too. Lots of books. Him and his wife wrote a book recently, came out this year, and they kind of explained more about why they do this. And it is such a practical way just to create a line in your budget of everything that you give away, like whether it is like to an actual nonprofit or church or anything like that, or whether it's like, hey, I took my friend out to lunch, that's part of my giving this year.
Mm,
And kind of to refocus yourself. It's not to track yourself and to say like, oh, I want to reach this much and I want to show everyone how good I am at giving, but it's to refocus your heart on how can I be others focused?
mm,
Just practically going through and combing through your expenses. You might be surprised and maybe a little ashamed about how much you don't give to others and just how much you don't give away. You might think that you're a generous person, but it might shock you. It definitely shocked me when I went through and actually started tracking my spending, and I did feel a little bit ashamed because I think Christians really should be the most generous people out there.
mm,
Like flat out, we should be the people out there who are just giving loads of money away because that's what Jesus did. Jesus went and abolished the law of Moses that we had back in the Old Testament. And one of the cool things that he did was he took all of these laws that were there and he kind of like
elevated them. Yeah,
yeah, elevated.
yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, you shouldn't murder someone, but you also shouldn't think poorly about them. Oh,
Mm,
that's a lot harder than not murdering my sister or brother or husband or wife, the people that irritate us.
yeah.
And so, we were set in the Mosaic law, we had the 10%, okay, we should give 10%. He never put an amount or anything. It wasn't like, okay, now you have 20%.
Mm-hmm.
But with his life, practically, he showed his generosity
Mm,
by sacrificing and giving to those in need. And I think we need to elevate that. We shouldn't stop at 10%. We should go above and beyond. And so, practical way to do that is go through your finances,
mm-hmm.
figure out how much you're giving, and don't, again, like, accept the grace that God has given you, and start to elevate that. Challenge yourself. Okay, maybe I'm only giving 8%. Can I bump it up to that 10%? Maybe next year give 11, or just, keep rolling that ball up to become more generous. And it's a really easy practical way. If you out there are kind of more of a numbers person and like to look at spreadsheets, just start tracking it. I mean, it definitely has encouraged my husband and I to seek out new and creative ways to be more generous.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of, especially Christians, right, when it comes to generosity, they get hung up on the 10%. And it's
Hmm.
funny, a couple years ago, I was teaching at a Bible college, and a lot of the students, we had a little after hours session. A lot of the students wanted to know, like, hey, should I give on the gross or the net, or if I make make some money on my property, should I give 10% of that? And I was like, where's your heart at? I was kind of chuckling inside, but I was thinking, like, is your heart in generosity? Like, do you want to give because you just want to be generous because that's what God commands, or are you just trying to get by on the yeah, check off the box and just do the least you can? And so I think it's really a heart issue, and it's an issue of the heart where you think, is what's my motivation in doing this? Is my motivation in giving so that I can store up true riches in heaven, or is my motivation in giving so I can check off the box and just do the right work according to Scripture? But I think that gets into like a works-based gospel, which I don't think is the way that we should view our relationship with Christ. It should be more of a doing it out of love and not out of
Yeah.
obligation.
Yeah, Paul says that we should give what each believer should give what they feel called to give.
Hmm.
We shouldn't, okay, sure, like Sally's giving 20% of her income and you're only able to give 4%. You shouldn't feel bad that you're not giving a large amount. The poor widow who only gave like the 2 coins, she
Hmm.
was considered more generous than the Pharisees who were giving like tons of money. So when you sit down and look at your budget and determine what you're able to give, don't feel bad if it's only a little bit of your income, but you should challenge yourself and consider, what are you already spending your money on that maybe you don't need to be? Are you trying to live a certain lifestyle that isn't really God focus? And can you refocus and reallocate your finances to be more generous and to look for those opportunities to participate in the kingdom? I think that's the coolest part about our finances, is that it's such a cool way that we get to participate and we're invited to be a part of these kingdom building activities.
Mm.
I think that's like when we start to think about our money more practically like that, not in a way of like, how can I store up more in my bank account, but how can I have more money to go and pour out to others?
Yeah.
Like, that's what's so cool about money management from a biblical perspective, is we have this bigger purpose for it.
Yeah, I think one of the scriptures that comes to mind is 1 Corinthians in 10. It says, "Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." And I think that really sums up this section. But how can I spend my income? How can I redeem my role as a steward? It's just whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Well, we are very close to the top of the hour, Katie. So I want to just say thank you so much for joining me on the Brighter Wealth Show. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about Katie Jones or Agape Investing or your faith-based money coach program?
Yeah, definitely. If you want to learn more about money coaching or just want some more resources, I have tons of free resources on becoming an excellent money manager over at my website, Agape Invests, Invests. So you can definitely go check me out there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about anything that we talked about. I mean, I love continuing the conversation. So feel free and shoot me an email or message me on Instagram or anything like that. And I'd be happy to chat.
Well, thanks again, Katie. I definitely recommend checking out Agape Invest. She has some great content, some great material on her website. She obviously is a follower of Christ and wants to help Christians become brighter stewards of God's wealth, which is something I'm passionate about at Brighter Wealth. So if you're interested to learn more about Brighter Wealth, you can visit brighterwealth.net. For everyone listening today, I just wanted to say thanks for joining us on the live stream, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, David. See you
Thanks.
later.
Bye-bye.